I'm about to open your eyes to a story that no one foresaw. Destiny 2, off the back of the most insane raid race of all time, the highest of heights, and the world's first that edged the Destiny community, was the perfect end to the 10-year journey. But with that came some massive lows.
There are no new people coming into this game.
The final shape was a success. The final shape was incredibly highly reviewed, and it still results in layoffs.
Just sitting here in my pajamas, staring at my monitor, not really sure what to say or think or do.
Low player counts, layoffs, uncertainty at the future of the franchise. Hell, I even took a look in the mirror and realized that it was more fun to cover even more communities around the gaming world. But if there's anything that Destiny 2 does better than any other game out there, it's that when the lows get lower, Bungie developers will always find a way to throw a Hail Mary and drop one of the best pieces of content of all time. So in true Bungie fashion, they dropped a Deep Stone Crypt dungeon that was the hardest they ever made, even surpassing some raids in the series for world's first time. While time is not the only factor in the community's judgment of a raid or a dungeon, time was ticking for one team seeking to claim world's first. That's right, this was the first dungeon to offer a world's first reward, and the first one with a contest modifier. With thousands of eyes watching, racers all over the world compete for decorated bracelets, jackets, emblems, exotics, and even perhaps a real-life exotic. This is a story that you will want to watch to the very end to believe. Welcome to Vespers Host, and the world's first race to defeat the Corrupted Puppeteer. Since Atrax 1 is back in the dungeon, I figured it best to bring back a design inspired by her awesome character. So, the Wildcard's Returrn is back in a more premium fit for a limited time. I don't like re-releasing merch, but I will say that this one has been upgraded to fit for newer styles. I also wanted to do what I did for the first knife card and try that with the Wildcard, but only if 50 of these are able to be bought will they be printed. They're very premium quality, so if you're interested in a collector's card, you have 48 hours to pick one of these up, or they won't get made. These sales go directly back into the channel and events like other zones we have so far, with Raid Zone, Dungeon Zone, and more to come. Thank you, and links are down below. I want to extend a huge thank you to everyone that showed up during our Dungeon Zone coverage. It warmed my heart from the ground up, and seriously guys, just thank you for showing out, as always. And if you guys do enjoy these types of deep dives into raids and dungeons, I think that you'll love my series on World's First Zombies Easter eggs. That is incredibly underrated on this channel. I know it's not Destiny, but the storylines with puzzles and World's First and more got me so fired up that I wanted to cover who could solve the Easter eggs for both Black Ops Zombies maps in the next Zone stream. This time, Zombie Zone. Please consider checking those videos out, as they are passion projects that I poured hundreds of hours of research into. It would mean the world to me, especially if you like raids and dungeons. I just figured I would shout that out, as I will be covering zombies shortly after this video launches. Aboard the Vesper, racers went to knock out some mechanics. That might sound familiar if you played Destiny's Deep Stone Crypt or Revision Zero Exotic Mission. Scanner and Operator were back, but they functioned different enough that it gave racers a bit of a hard time to grasp. Normally, Scanner could see the panels operators would shoot. Operators had the ability to shoot the panels, which would then unlock something, like a glass door, a lock, whatever it may be. This time, the scanner's job was to run past the panels and identify which ones were the real ones, marked by a very specific sound, and a mark of white on the minimap. Operator followed suit to shoot those the same. If the wrong one was shot, Operator died, and if you held onto these corrupted augments for too long without banking them, you died. The thought process of a dungeon to this point was more in line with simpler mechanics. This is because Bungie has to design a dungeon around the potential to be soloed, as there are in-game cosmetics for completing that daring task. So racers had to think in terms of solo mechanics. What they weren't prepared for was that reset in ideology at Bungie. While yes, Vespers Host is a dungeon that can be soloed for cosmetics, you can see why it's much more complex and closer to a raid with these mechanics. The only solo forgiving grace here is that the augments don't have a lockout timer the way they do in Deep Stone Crypt, meaning that you can swap them around with leisure. But in a world's first scenario, those nerves, the panicking, made every single death, every decision, make all the difference. Bungie's emphasis going into the next era and hitting that reset button on Destiny might have been that instead of an unfamiliar new ground to give players an obstacle, it's to evolve on what was already a great concept. Take a step outside of the dungeon and look at the most recent massive activity called Onslaught. Players love this, so Bungie decided to build on it and built a 2.0 version in the episode that Vespers Host was in. Vespers Host follows those same guidelines, and as a result is a 2.0 version of the Deep Stone Crypt. Even though it's way further out of the orbit of Europa, it's still playing with those landscapes, those enemy varieties, and those mechanics. How do you feel about this change? Should Bungie keep evolving more great activities and locations, or should they keep giving us new ones instead? Let me know in the comments. This sequel idea can be held true in the very first encounter called Activation. With this beautiful backdrop of what is known as the Anomaly, but is incredibly important for my story and lore audience and for the future of Destiny, the encounter began with a brig in the middle. Racers were quite literally off to the races, and the first impact of contest mode was felt by this room. Bungie really wanted contest dungeons to work out, as a timer made things all the more stressful. But contests as a whole had the community watching. See, if you wanted to attempt normal mode of the dungeon, you had to wait until the very first 3 teams crossed the finish line and to the podium, meaning that everyone in the community was either cheering teams on or was getting bitter by not being able to play it on normal yet. Activation held 4 rooms: the center base, the brain room, the lung room, and the heart room. Each of these rooms may have looked a bit different, but the mechanics were all the same. Kill the brig, then jump over to a side and fight through enemies together, dodging and probably dying to those massive machine priest assistants to open the gates. Seriously, just have a look at the damage these enemies were capable of on contest mode. And we haven't even taken into account that the dregs and the precise jumping that was required made it all the more stressful. Destiny players at this point are stronger than ever. The whole arsenal is available. So Bungie knew that they had to start throwing enemies at you, or you were just going to run right through it. I say the whole arsenal was available to Destiny players, but there were some bans for contest mode. For starters, the staple to the series, Tether, was banned for seemingly no reason, which of course there's a reason. Others were weapons like Wardcliff Coil, so no, Redeem, you can't coil glitch your way out of this. But Bungie accidentally did allow exotic weapons into the game even though they were supposed to be disabled. So this was less of a disabled list and more like a suggestion list. Tether would have been helpful with those hordes of enemies pouring out of the rooms in Activation, as the mechanic was to scan which of the panels were real and then have operators shoot the real ones in the room. A nuke would spawn in like it was Deep Stone Crypt, but this time the run back to the center was tougher.
You can see the other ones are glowing for him, but I don't know. Is he just supposed to shoot all of them?
No.
So you Fourth one he shot.
One, yeah, you can kill
Order.
you. Kill you.
Just go forward because
Let me
I'm dying. Next, please. Pick it up.
Not only was there the assistants and dregs, but now there were shanks with mohawks, wielding a stasis aura around them. This was to slow racers' jumps, tripping up the timing and dropping them into the vacuum of space. If you dropped the nuke or let it expire on the timer, it wouldn't wipe you like Deep Stone Crypt would. But due to the contest timer ticking, racers would need to restart. Each time a nuke was brought to the center, another brig stood in the way. But by the time the third room came around and the timer was inching closer to death, a much larger brig stood in the way. Funny enough, this one was actually easier to deal with for those who had the artifact mod from the episode named Concussive Reload, as it would weaken the boss type enemies like this larger brig with grenade launchers. and those were pretty much all you would be seeing in the race for World's First. After around 35 minutes in activation, we tracked players ATP, Zemo, and Reminisce, some names you might recognize for their play on videos that we have made before, as they marched through the encounter first. Racers were frantically watching on as this team was through. The mechanics were simple, but the timer and execution, that was another problem altogether. Completing contest mode is one massive feat in and of itself, but being World's First is a whole different ballgame. Since this was the first dungeon race, there were no buffs covered on the screen like we saw in Salvation's Edge. There were no comms hidden, no dado glasses up close, just our eyes and ears in the huddle of every team racing. Due to that, teams were bound to have scouts watching either Dungeon Zone, our show, or other players' POVs and feeding information. Remember, this was a race of strategy and execution. So now ATP, Zemo, and Rem had the anxiety of one slip up potentially costing them a trip through the checkered flag. The in-between sections of this dungeon have their own story that I'll save for after the race, but if you like puzzles, stick around for that. For day one racers, this called for banking nukes into different stations in a relay race similar to activation. You had to power doors on and off with preserved power, but what it really was a teaser of a boss to come. This gigantic servitor not only was a block in the plans of navigation, but was a tax to your team's revive tokens. In raids, players each have one revive token to use on one other player, with 6 total players. So a death or two doesn't really matter. But a factor new to dungeon races, one that nobody foresaw, was that a res token made all the difference, as you only had 3 total. This would directly impact the race, and was one of the biggest elements in making Vespers Host such a special one to watch. After getting the servitor tax, this team was at the next room in just about 10 more minutes. But just like the racers, nobody was prepared for what was next. It was almost like Bungie was breaking a sweat trying to make Siva for Destiny 2 in this encounter. Bombs dropping from the ceiling, monitors with numbers to shoot, fallen pouring from all around. This servitor, Raneiks, held together by duct tape. Add some red wires, and this is a Siva boss fight. If you wanted to make that argument even further, you can actually hear different dialogue from the Vesper ship AI if you have Outbreak perfected, the only Siva weapon featured in Destiny 2. Here, have a listen.
You're contaminated with banned technology. Security will be alerted. Be more careful, alright?
This can also be said for the exotic weapon hierarchy of needs.
Interdicted machine intelligence. I don't understand. I don't understand.
That dang Brave family. What kind of experiments even led to a servitor like Raneiks? And why does that name sound so much like Tanix? Day 1 here would leave many racers in a panic, however, as new mechanics were introduced. Not only was there a flurry of enemies for ATP, Zemo, and Rem to destroy, with many of broken prismatic ability spam builds to be utilized, but there was a lot more chaos all around. Raneiks didn't have a timer, but instead a massive scare of danger close bombings to front. After killing the machinist enemy and banking the operator augment into the terminal, Raneiks would teleport you up top to square up with you. In a very tight space, with little cover, racers had to dodge the OG Donkey Kong-like obstacles, which included exploder shanks that would kill your whole squad so fast, sniper shanks that would hit you from afar, and of course, Raneiks exploding balls. For these players, deaths would pop up often, as the other new mechanic introduced called for you to be front and center to the boss. This was the suppressor augment from, you guessed it, Deep Stone Crypt. In the crypt, this mechanic worked by standing in zones and shooting at Tanix, but for Raneiks, you had to use your grenade as a clone. No, literally.
Okay, my grenade is a dude. I'm trying to use it. I like.
Oh, what? Whoa!
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Oh, and I blow it.
And it blew it up.
Okay,
The goal for Racers was to use the suppressor grenade ability to make a clone, then shoot said clone to break the boss into a bunch of smaller servitors like your babushka's favorite Matrishka dolls. Racers wouldn't discover for another 15 minutes that the eyes having red marks on the servitors was the key to getting to damage. For a bit, it was thought that you had to shoot these servitors, but they were immune. Then it was thought to shoot the red marked ones, but alas, immune. Finally, it was decided that the ones with the mark were also numbered, and those numbers associated to the panels in the starting room. Once this was put together, well, the time was catching up to ATP, Zemo, and Rem, as now Elysium, Salta Grepo, Obama Gaming, and Son of Fetus were on the way to the second encounter.
Okay, exit encounter should be top right. We're done.
Nice.
Okay.
Good shit.
Nice.
It took another couple of attempts for Elysium to take over the lead, as they had all the information from the other team and applied that to execution. So long as the boss didn't obliterate them and they could use operators to input the panels, they would be set for a damage rotation. And they were.
Whoa.
Damage, damage!
Oh!
Damage!
Balls!
Damage!
Balls! Okay.
Damage!
Here we go.
Damage!
Here we go.
Damage!
All right.
Come on!
Tractors out. Let's see how much damage they can do.
Yeah, do not move. Do not move.
Oh.
Okay.
Don't move.
Don't
Okay.
move.
Break integration.
Oh, you have to break line of sight?
Oh.
Oh my god, you have to get
Tractors?
rid of the balls?
Bro, he has
Dude.
so much health, what?
Oh my gosh.
This guy has so much
So
HP.
much health. Good lord.
Oh my, that's what Tractor and Supers.
my.
How long?
That's
How long is the
health.
damage phase?
Oh, they.
No, wait, the generators? Surely there is
Oh
like a
my
damage
God.
round.
They did nothing.
That is not...
Too bad the damage was brutal. Again, thoughts swirled on the method. Was it shoot the correct numbered ones, or was it to just blast all of these servitors during the DPS? If that was the case, then what was the best output of damage? And if that was the case, it makes so much sense why Tether was banned from the race altogether, as these servitors connected to one another, meaning that they would probably get destroyed. Well, as a follow-up to the Deep Stone Crypt, it was fitting that this boss was taking massive heaps of damage from the exotic weapon Parasite, since it blew up an entire area in such a large quantity of worm-filled damage. This was a tense back-and-forth battle here for Racers. Okay.
Careful behind you.
I know the music.
Oh man, dude.
Wait, where did he even die from?
Explode from behind. It was.
Oh.
That's.
They're,
Okay,
they're like hitting.
Oh,
oh my
whoa.
god.
So what he did it to survive.
That's rough.
That's a wrap. That's a wrap.
Servitor attack.
Okay.
Ah. There we go. Then that's a different statement. Like it sounds like I said the same thing twice, but I didn't.
Oh,
Whoa,
that is
whoa.
Yeah, I told you it was broken. I told you it was broken.
Parasite.
Shit. Good fucking shit, guys.
Oh,
Parasite.
Let's go.
Parasite.
Parasite.
Method.
It got so intense that this race was already longer than Eater of Worlds, Scourge of the Past, and Wrath of the Machine. And it wasn't even halfway done yet. After an hour and a half of Raneiks, eventually Racers would pull through.
I don't know what's happening.
You're the ones with the buttons.
Yeah, they're exploding.
Wait.
Oh, you have to kill them in order.
Three first. Oh, wait, what the fuck is...
Three last.
I don't-
I don't know what's happening.
Kill it. I don't... Okay.
None of my fucking business. I don't care.
Keep going.
Yeah, transition. Lock in. Did anyone get past this? Do we know? Make sure.
No, you're going.
Okay.
Down here.
NA Painter, Almighty Glorp, and Zone were now in front of every team before them and trekking through the vast open waves of the station. But they weren't far ahead, as both other teams we previously mentioned cleared in the next attempt.
There we go. Can they bring it home? This will be the second one we know of. Obviously, there could be plenty more
Okay, go.
of what we know of so far. Here we go, guys.
Good shit, boys.
That's it.
And there it.
I know.
Wait,
Is he dead? Wait. He's not dead.
he's not dead.
He's not
What-
dead.
Are they bugged? What's happening?
he's dead. He's
No.
No,
Wait.
no.
Wait. Whoa.
What the fuck is happening?
What?
Whoa, no.
What?
No, are they bugged? No, they're bugged.
No,
Oh my
they got it.
gosh,
They got it.
dude.
That was
Oh,
so.
they almost wiped.
many
They
servers.
almost wiped.
There was a team that killed like 3 minutes
Holy!
ago.
They almost wiped there. They almost wiped there.
Happening for everyone else? Like, what am I seeing right now?
Yo, have we reached like the damage cap here? He hasn't stopped, or he hasn't moved in a while. He's been like really low. Oh, wait, he's almost dead, guys.
I'm not lagging or anything, right? Like no one's lagging.
Isn't this awesome? I'm just gonna stop. They're gonna come back dead, bro. It's literally one. Oh, yeah, there it is. There it is. Here it comes. Okay, there's one left.
And that is how you do Raneiks.
Yeah, world's first one.
World's first one-phase contest.
While these teams drifted into space and on to the next portion of the raid, it's important to not bury the lead here. Just look at what Contest Dungeon has already put up. Look at what the next era of the game was becoming. Not only was there major lore implications aboard the next journey through the anomaly portal that for all we know could either take us to Frontiers or Destiny Rising, the mobile game, but there was real genuine push from Bungie and the community to set the stage for something more. This jumping puzzle contained a door that couldn't be opened unless proper upgrades were given, laser traps that only the Fallen were known for, and this lightning mechanic that a boss was throwing at the players climbing the station. This mechanic is also an evolution of Tanic's Blast from Deep Stone Crypt, as that one was purple and had a larger delay, so this one fittingly was a sequel and was yellow with the floor becoming lava. At the top of this climb and the top of the Vesper sat Atrax, the Corrupted Puppeteer. The Return of the Wildcard.
Atrax is chilling here. Yo.
That background is like aura.
Hello, how are you, Atrax?
Oh, big. Okay.
Now you see why I had to bring the Wildcard merch back. So, longtime lore fans would definitely be licking their lips and spilling pages on why Atrax was here. But World's First Racers didn't have time for lore yet, so maybe we'll ask Bife a bit later into the video. This room had more complexities to it, but was more of a way to tie in the whole experience. Not only were 3 augments here, but so was Atrax, with plenty of those clones from Deep Stone Crypt to deal with. This was also the time when Vespers Host would pass Root of Nightmares in World's First time. And small spoilers here, Racers would be stuck at this boss for almost 2 more hours. Bungie built on what worked in the previous 2 encounters for Atrax, and if you've seen raid or dungeon stories before on my channel, then you know that Bungie loves to make the final encounter a sum of the rest of the raid, the ultimate test. For this one, there was a lot of movement like in the first one, then there was suppressor baiting and killing like the second encounter, and even laser avoiding like in the in-between sections of the ship. The issue Racers would face here was not only the pressure of World's First, as everyone was making progress to get to Atrax fast, but also the pressure of the enemies in the top room. There were dregs with shotguns, there were invisible marauders with shotguns, the boss was in the front of the room sniping at you, replicas of Atrax were there to give you radiation stacks, killing you, also swiping you, and then you had to use a suppressor and kill them. All of this while doing the mechanics at 25 light levels under. You could almost feel the nerves from Racers through the screen. Vespers Host was all about playing your life, but when you have to rush, you rush your life away too. After Racers figured out that you needed to find the numbers to shoot, scan the panels, and suppress the clones, they also discovered that the next steps were jumping down the holes with the red lights signaling that Atrax, yes the real one, was on that side. After a mush of enemies had been slain and Atrax avoided due to her presence being radioactive, Racers discovered a room where they needed to do more mechanics. Getting to and executing mechanics would take up to 45 minutes for teams to figure out, and that time allowed for other teams to catch up, like Clan Indebted's A-Tides, Pine, and Special Hero. Names or clan names that might sound familiar if you watch raid race videos we have made in the past. This team was off to a slow start, but was making strides of progress in the final encounter. The first team to figure out this mechanic was the first team to beat the first encounter, ATP, Zemo, and Reminisce. If it wasn't clear, Racers needed to use Operator to shoot the panels, spawning in 4 Atrax clones. Then they needed to run up and scan the correct one. If it was incorrect when they killed that clone, the room turned into a furnace and you died. If they were correct, a nuke dropped from the body. Now, if a Racer didn't bank the augment in the terminal, then walk through the field to the safe room, the augment would need to be regained, and this added stress to the already tight race, since this augment would be more out of the way to find again. After the Racers were safe, life, a controversial mechanic was added. Yes, you had to dunk the nuke, ideally baking Aatrox's shield right off, but now you had to do that twice, and many players were conflicted on if this should have been this way, since it might have thrown off the dance of the encounter. What do you think though? Leave me a comment. No matter, racers had to dodge more clones and tripwires to get through the next Aatrox room, and repeat, eventually climbing up for damage, and that is where the majority of time was spent.
There's multiple puppets though. They're weaker on the left and right.
Okay, wait.
They have no scanner indication. So it's
I was gonna kill one and see what happens.
Alright, yeah, this is moving.
No damage was being done. It was to the point that players were convinced that we were missing a mechanic, and I can explain why. See, in the last dungeon, Warlord's Ruin, shooting eyes around the boss extended damage, and with all these Aatrox clones, you would think that would be the case here. But no, it was just brutal. Aatrox firing at racers, clones firing, beams of lightning from the anomaly, no cover, limited revives, and a massive amount of damage to deal to get the kill. Contest already had limited phases of damage to deal with before Enrage would wipe the timer. But now, all of this stress and world's first on the line, you could really feel the tension. This was felt at Raneiks, but with Aatrox, only having 3 shots of damage meant that every bit had to count. The good news was that one of these Aatrox clones was glowing with a nuke inside of it to extend the damage phase and avoid a wipe. It wouldn't make a big difference for a while, but this is where teams would continue to struggle.
I think if you do a nuke, you get like an extension one more time, but if you don't do hard wipe, you probably just do it twice.
Baby.
I think you can leave out the back door after
down the bottom.
Just grab it and go. You have to dunk it in 3 seconds. You have 3 seconds.
I don't think I can hit that.
Damage wasn't passing the R in Puppeteer, so teams had to get shifty. The method racers were opting for was Anarchy and Snipers, or Snipers and Grenade Launchers in general, since that debuff we talked about earlier paired with raw inputs of damage made it at least in concept feasible. You would need a crack strategy to get some real damage, and that is what A-Tides pulled off.
I was AFK for a bit there.
I mean, again, like, I don't know about you guys. We have to get out.
Brother, I think I can do it.
You can see that the damage output was nuts from these racers, utilizing full rotations of grenade launcher ammo, sniper ammo, buffs, debuffs, positioning, and even the extra knowledge that world's first racers would need, like that the exotic sanguine alchemy gave extra damage to marked targets, and that made Team Indebted a shoo-in for at least making it possible, so long as they didn't wipe. Time went on, and more teams inched closer.
Watch your radars. There's Radiant for all of you.
But only one team was going to win. And after 4 hours and 23 minutes of dungeon madness, they did it.
Just remember, play your life. Nugget, play your life. Okay, now clones. Just fuck the boss, focus clones.
Jump, stay up.
Can you heal turret? Come.
We're done. Okay, shit, guys. Good.
Put it in.
Just lock in.
Easy, Indebted win.
Indebted win? Indebted win? Just like that, baby! Just like that! Oh my god! Nice. Send them home! Let's go!
Clan Indebted with the biggest win of their careers, coming off of a great performance in both Salvation's Edge and Crota's Remaster, where they were a runner-up, pulled off the very first dungeon contest win ever. This team was rewarded with world's first bracelets, world's first jackets, the first icebreakers in Destiny 2, and a quest that has a lot to do. When asked about the dungeon and the race, they had this to say.
How do y'all feeling?
I feel amazing.
We're feeling so good.
I'd gone in, I was like, imagine if this is like over 2.5 hours. I think it easily could be harder than a Ron race, right?
Yeah.
And there was no crazy jail cell, no crazy puzzle. Like, it was just straight encounters with good mechs, and yeah, I got a good lengthy race out of it. So I'm ecstatic.
So.
I think next dungeon race, people are gonna mute comms and.
I
so.
do think that slowly that's gonna develop. It's
hopefully
just.
we can have a gentleman's agreement. And not,
yeah, that's my biggest thing.
Yeah.
We have a lot of eyes. I do think Bungie should. I really think that if you want to be qualified for a belt or a podium or whatever, you should have to have an undisrupted like POV with like your stream. Doesn't have to be like anything crazy, but like no blurring and ideally no muting comms. Yeah, because
it should be a rule.
Really like at least with this race, it makes it so much more genuine, a lot less hiding, and I really feel like that's just such a better race experience.
Well, you're definitely not
right.
wrong. I mean,
Now, I am happy to say that this isn't where the story ends for Vespers Host. In fact, this is where another community World's First began. This one was not for physical stakes brought to you by Bungie, or the physical prize of the real-life icebreaker like we had for Dungeon Zone that will be given away in a later contest, but instead for the community-found catalyst and loot. So, let's start with that wonderful icebreaker. After the journey for anyone on contest, icebreaker was the drop. And while it's a really good option in both PvE and PvP, I think the journey for the catalyst and other loot is stronger. Not only did this call for you to destroy stasis crystals with the icebreaker, but it called for a much larger community puzzle, including panels, operator and scanner, a good chunk of math reminiscent to Wrath of the Machine's Outbreak Prime puzzle, and even binary with its own mini games. This puzzle was so much to understand that I figured it best to ask one of the players who solved it first on how they did it.
Consider this 1, this 2, and this 3 in these rows here, or in these columns, these rows. This is row 1, 2, 3. So 1 is active, 0 is off, kind of like binary. And so you can see that this is on, so this one is on, but this one is off, and this one is on, so this one is off. And so what this is essentially, this is the key. This left side is the, yeah, it's saying, hey, this first version is an and one.
This was ultimately a community effort to solve 4 mini puzzles in and of themselves, like a D-pad game to move the number to the other number. Then there was an and scenario with binary, there was a rock, paper, scissors game, and more. This culminated to one true answer by the end, and the reward was great. Not only was an icebreaker catalyst waiting for the community from this chest room, but a focus drop of whatever you wanted depending on the code input was too. This was the first time a focus drop ever had been in a dungeon, and for the parameters to be set this way, it was great. Not to mention, for the story enjoyers, the Vespers AI had finally taken control back of the ship, and thank you for that. The story of the race and the community was the focus, but it would be unfair to not include the future of the community in the anomaly. Now, I am not a lore expert, but from what I gather, this Atrax was the real one, and the one in the crypt was fake. She has also called upon the Fallen in some way, wielding a foreign power, and maybe the Echoes have something to do with this, but I believe we will be flying full speed into the anomaly to start Frontiers. The reasoning is that the AI of the Vesper was not able to take control from Clovis' commands, and Atrax saw a chance to take it over and use it to gain power from the anomaly. Then by the end of our story here, we give her the commands back. Who knows? She could be an evil AI like Clovis or Hal from Alien, or she could be a friendly AI that helps us in Frontiers to fly into the anomaly. Let me know what you think in the comments. It's safe to say that this race was the most special one for dungeons, and even superseded some of the raid stories in my opinion. It's clear that Bungie has hit the reset button on the community perception of dungeon races. They hit the reset button for sure on Deep Stone Dungeon, and they can hopefully reset the faith in the series headed into the next one and Frontiers. Thank you for watching, enjoy some bloopers, and I will see you next time.
Stop it.
I'm stuck. I'm stuck.
Okay.
Help! Help!
What a tragic ending.
Boot system right here.
Who? Where?
Right here. Just stand here.
Oh yeah.
Oh hey.
Behind you.
That
Behind
was
you.
totally off.
Oh!
Please clip that.
Oh my god.
Away he goes. No.
Okay.
Oh my god.